Hello and welcome to the Melbourne AWS user group for August. Can't believe we're in August already. I think this is the 107th event that we've hosted. In our regular end of the month, like last Wednesday of the month, presentation series, which we started in about 2011, I think, or so. So welcome along. If this is your first one, it's really great to have you. If you've been around for a little bit, it's really great to see you come back again. Now, my background will look a little bit different because I have moved house, which means that I've had a great time trying to find all of my bits and pieces and all my gear and get it all set up. So please bear with us if the stream does drop out at any point. Rest assured, we'll get it back up as soon as we can. So that notwithstanding, let's get straight into the action. So the agenda for tonight, we're in the introductions bit now. I'll get out of the way and let the content happen as soon as we possibly can. Straight up after me will be my co-host Ian, and JM's back again for this month to talk what's new in AWS. They'll run through all of the things that have been announced since the last time we had an event, so the last month or so. Straight up after that, we have two great presentations tonight. First one is from developer Steve about secure app development with AWS code pipelines. And then our second presentation of the night, Jason Wood's come back to talk to us now about EC2, which is some non-serverless thing. I don't really know, but I'm sure Jason will take us through that. And then at the end of the night, I'll come back in to do a quick wrap-up. And then at about 8 o'clock or so when we finish, we normally have a post-stream Zoom catch-up if anybody's interested in joining. The details for that will be in our Slack channel, and I'll tell you how to get on Slack in just a minute. So if this is your first one tonight, we do encourage you to ask questions. Ask all questions, ask any questions. This is your chance to get in the minds of the people who are presenting tonight, or any of us who are involved in the live stream. And to get your questions answered. There's no better time to get your questions answered by somebody who knows what they're talking about is right after they're finished talking about it. So the way we work is you can ask questions online. This is interactive. It's not directly interactive. You don't need to worry about having a camera or video chat gear set up. Just post your questions either in the Melbourne channel on Slack using the AWS Melb hashtag, or you can just type them right there in the chat on YouTube. At the end of each presentation, myself or Ian will jump back on the live stream and we'll ask the presenter the questions on your behalf. And then obviously you'll be able to hear the answer as we ask them on your behalf, and we'll have a conversation about it. We also encourage any and all comments or feedback via those same channels, Slack, Twitter, YouTube. Now, none of this would be possible without our sponsors in general. These events do take money, cost money to put on. They obviously cost a lot less than having to pay for catering and drinks every month, but they still cost money. And so without our sponsors, this basically wouldn't happen. They really are here to enable the community there, and we're very thankful for them being there. So our gold sponsor for the rest of this year is CMD. They were a silver sponsor last year, and we're really grateful that they've stepped up to gold sponsorship this year. And we have two new sponsors have come on board as silver sponsors. Versant, who has been a sponsor a few years back, and Civo as well this year. So a big thanks to all of our three sponsors who will be with us for the rest of this year. And like I said, we couldn't do this without them. So their support is really, really, really welcome. Thank you very much. So a little bit about who we are. My name's Rob, if you're new here. I usually go by @Bok on Slack and some derivative of that for most social media platforms. And my co-host who you'll meet in a minute is Ian. Ian and I, we don't work for AWS. We are just members of this community the same as you. We live and we breathe AWS every day. And like the presenters you'll meet tonight and that we've had in the past, AWS is our bread and butter. It keeps my roof over my head. So it's like I said, we don't work for AWS, which means that we don't have to necessarily say nice things about AWS. We can say whatever we like. And we welcome all opinions about AWS, the good, the bad, the ugly, anything that can make our lives as architects, developers, DevOps, whatever you do, anything that makes our work and our jobs easier. That's what we're here for. So speaking of Slack, you can join our Slack team at melbourne.awsug.org.au/Slack. And there are a number of channels on there. I think we're up to about 800 or so members on the Slack team. It is one of the most active ones in Australia, which is not saying a lot because not very many people are active during lockdown anymore. But it is a great place to hang out. It is a great place to ask questions and to complain about the quality of some of AWS's services, because that happens a little bit. But we also have a jobs channel if you're looking for work or if you are looking for employees. And we have a couple of channels related to that are usually bot driven, like the AWS outages channel and the announcements channel, where we can have discussions about breakages and new things that will break soon. I don't know. See how we go. Either way, jump on there. And yeah, we'll see you on there. We're always looking for people to get involved in this community. The hardest part of putting these events on is finding people who are willing to contribute and willing to speak. And it doesn't have to be a very well practiced presentation that you've put 50 hours of effort into polishing slides. It can literally be just a 10-minute demo of a cool tool that you found, or something useful, anything really. If you're interested in speaking, jump on the Slack channel. There's a volunteers channel, I think, or just ask in general. It's not so busy that we need to separate channels out. But yeah, like we welcome topics of anything related to AWS, or even related to cloud in general. Like, it doesn't have to be AWS specific. It could be about DevOps, or it could be about security, or anything in that sort of space. Not looking for sponsors at the moment, but watch this space at the end of the year. We'll be back up for sponsorship. And we're always looking for volunteers as well. There's a volunteers channel on Slack. Okay. So the only thing I've got in my list of upcoming events at the moment is the big one that we all know and sometimes love, sometimes don't love. It depends on how much work you have to do the week after, I suppose, coming into Christmas, to update things. But it is back on again this year. They have said that it's in person. Obviously, I don't think anybody watching this is going to be able to attend in person, sadly. But there is a virtual component to it as well. I don't think that's meant to be December 15. Either way, check out the reInvent website, reinvent.awsevents.com. Don't forget just to sign up to see the announcement details when they come through. And we'll obviously every month we'll let you know if there's anything that changes with regards to content and tickets and all of those sorts of things. I think that's the last slide that I have. Yep, back at the beginning. So we'll throw over now to Ian and JM for what's new in AWS.
Cool. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Rob.
Hello, everyone.
As you can see, today with me is JM. So that's great. A bit of a warning, like last month, this month was not super exciting in regards to the news, but we'll take you through the highlights anyway. And that starts with finally in Sydney. This is obviously a feature that everybody has been waiting for. If you use workspaces with your own AD system that has smart card authentication, you can now use that to authenticate.
Yes, so I had to have a look what CAC was and PIV. So CAC is a common access card, which is the standard one, but the personal identity verification PIV is more like a YubiKeys that you can use for authenticating. So now instead of putting login name and password, you're going to use your card and a PIN number. So much easier to do MFA and biometrics authentication with Workspace.
Yep. But moving on from this, we'll go to everybody's favorite serverless section. A couple things here. If you're a Python developer or just like to use Python for your Lambda functions, then you'll be happy to know that Python 3.9 is now available. I don't actually know what's new about it, but do you happen to know, JM?
Yes, so Python 3.9 is the latest release of Python. It will be supported until 2025, October 2025, so a bit of time there to have fun with it. You can use the runtime both in the container-based Lambda image and then in the Lambda itself. And so the support for Python 3.9 is TLS 1.3, new string and dictionary operation, improved time zone support. I don't know if that time zone support, sorry, I don't know if that really apply to us, and a couple of performance optimization as well. So just moving to 3.9 with that code change, you can benefit a bit of better performance. There is a blog post from AWS on how to use it properly.
So that's cool. On the API gateway side, I think it was last year that mutual TLS was introduced there, but you could only use that with the AWS private CA generated certificate authorities. And now you can use third-party ones as well.
So yes, you can import your external existing certificate into SCM private CA and use them into the API gateway, where before you couldn't. It had to be issued by SCM itself. So that's solution a lot when there is CCC involved, or open banking or open data, to be able to use MTLS with external certificate from your company. So that's a very good improvement for the financial sector.
Yep. Then the last two here, Amplify Geo, seems to be a integration of Amplify with the location, Amazon Locations service that was released earlier this year.
Yeah, yes, correct. That's just an integration with Amazon Location Service with pre-integrated map UI components and a couple of mapping service for your application. It's only a JavaScript based application at the moment, the toolkit.
Yeah. And if you use an RDS proxy, you can now use those with a shared VPC. So, JM, do you want to?
Yeah, that was a problem. A lot of my customers use VPC sharing or subnet sharing across multiple accounts, and then so they couldn't use that proxy service because it had to be in the owner VPC. So now you can. RDS proxy is a bit confusing name because you can use it for MySQL and Postgres only, or Aurora, but again MySQL and Postgres. So you can't use it for every RDS, but it's a good service, and now you can use it across multiple accounts with a shared subnet type design. So good improvement. Came a bit late.
Yep. Cool. Then containers. It was kind of a quiet month in regard to containers. The only thing that really came out is that EKS now supports the Malta CNI, which basically means that you can attach multiple ENIs to a pod. Which
again, another layer of complexity for Kubernetes. That's fun to have that, but it's another kind of abstraction layer. We're going to be able to attach multiple ENI interface to the same pod. I had a look at, I don't have any use case myself, but I had a look at a couple of options. People are talking about streaming data and maybe more for the streaming industry and television industry, where they can have a split traffic between a monitoring tool and then a streaming tool on the same pod with a multiple network interface. Another layer of complexity to add to your Kubernetes to have some fun with Meltus.
Then on the DevOps side, CDK Pipelines is now GA. CDK Pipelines is the CI/CD solution for CDK. We've discussed it previously, and if you're using CDK, it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, that allows you to have pipeline as code and patterns to be able to deploy your application across multiple accounts. Quite interesting, but you need to be full live and breathe AWS and CDK to be able to use it. But it's an interesting product. It's changing a bit the design of control CI/CD pipelines that you can generate yourself.
Yep. The rest is mostly all smaller improvements here. Is there any in particular you would like to call out, JM?
I like the CloudWatch cross-account alarms. I think that's going to change a bit the way we design maybe landing zone and the way we monitor multiple production account. So now you can dedicate an AWS account to do your monitoring for your production environment and send all the alarm from different and multiple AWS accounts. So for companies who have a lot into one place, and you can even have multiple type of composite alarms where one account can alarm another account and then create that kind of chain of alarms and monitoring for your environment. So a bit complex to implement. You need to, there's a CloudFormation template that AWS provide, but you can deploy that across to create an IAM role basically for each account, and then you can assume the role, do STS, and then start searching for your alarms and metrics into the other account, and then building dashboard and stuff like that. So it's interesting for large account who want to monitor multiple account in one.
Yep. On the security side, it was also slim pickings. This might change with everything was probably waiting for reinforce. So I'm expecting a lot more to come out soon, but in the meantime, we're limited to not much, really.
Yes, 3 little announcement. One for WAF will allow you to version manage role groups. So usually AWS can provide you AWS manage groups for your WAF. But instead of accepting the new rule and the new improvement all the time, we might break your application. You can version them and then just test them, and then have a better process to test your WAF rules. That's, I think, a good improvement for WAF 2, not available in WAF 1. And then license manager, similar to backup, similar to many products now, integrated with organization that you can add a dedicated AWS account to manage your licensing across your multiple account instead of using the master account and the payer account. So you can monitor your Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, and IBM licensing at no charge across multiple accounts from one central dedicated account. Security Hub, you want to talk about it, or there is just a couple of?
It's just a couple of new controls. People can check it out.
It's still, config rules at the end. There is now 159 security controls who automatically check your security posture in AWS. Some of the new one about EC2 security groups, not having the port open to the world for 22 to 389, ECS IP addresses not being public and stuff like that. So a couple of better security posture. It's quite always good to have.
And the other cool stuff. So we've got new instances, and AWS has decided that Intel is no longer important enough that it doesn't need its own prefix. So now M6i instances, this is the Intel version of basically the Graviton instances that we got almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They're a bit faster. Actually, they might be faster than the Graviton ones, or at least things like the DBS throughput is slightly higher, and it has higher instance sizes as well, going up to 32x large, which has, I believe, 128 CPUs and 0.5 terabyte of memory.
Yeah, that's an impressive machine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, finally, AWS defined a naming convention for the instances. We can recognize them. So I for Intel, A for AMD, and then G for Graviton. That's now clear. We can recognize them. And then, like you said, yeah, 15% improvement in compute for price performance. No bare metal yet, but that's coming. And not in Sydney yet. It's only in the US and Europe at the moment, in Singapore. And if you want to use the new bandwidth, you need the ENA driver version 3 on your AMI.
Yep. And the other one that we'll call out before it's time to move on is MemoryDB for Redis. Because we didn't have enough Redis solutions within AWS yet, MemoryDB is a complete in-memory database. It seems to be slightly slower than Elasticache, from what I read, but has more functionalities from actual Redis, whereas Elasticache Redis is very limited to just being a caching solution. This allows you to use it as an actual database.
Yeah, so AWS tried to clarify that. So MemoryDB is really a primary, it can be a really primary database in memory, and then has more multi-AZ function and more high availability function. Elasticache is more designed for read and writes for existing database. You can still use it as a primary database, but it's not recommended because you might lose your data. I don't know, it would have been better if they just fix Elasticache and make it more reliable than trying to create a new product. But hey, we're going to have two now, and you can use DB6 instance, DBR memory, and not in Sydney yet, but it's coming soon.
Yeah. And I think we'll leave it at that so that we can switch to our actual presentations. As always, a reminder, Jam, Guy, and myself, we also record a podcast about the news. We actually didn't record one yet for July due to scheduling conflicts, mostly due to sick children. And therefore, we'll be combining one for July and August, which we'll be recording soon. So keep an eye out for that. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. This is going real well. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, JM. Steve is our presenter who is up next. And so that I don't make any more mistakes, looks like Steve's ready. Let's just switch straight over.
Amazing. Thank you. So great to be here, and just excited to, well, just as usual, just excited to geek out with folks, because I always love connecting with developers, with DevOps, with tech folk in general, and in particular, just having that whole community connection. So please put your comments as we go through tonight's presentation, put them into the chat. I also accept face palms and emojis of face palms. We'll get to that in a moment. But again, thank you to the organizers and the amazing job they do. Like Rob was saying at the start, if you have a presentation that you would like to do, please reach out to one of the organizers. And if you need help with putting together slides, putting together a story, just with something you want to share, I'm more than happy to help. So please just reach out. I am on the Slack as well. So join the Slack if you haven't already. Before I do get underway, I'd like to begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the traditional owners on the lands that we meet today, with a special heartfelt respect and acknowledgement to the Wurundjeri people, who are the traditional owners here in Narromine, And for those that don't know where Narromine is, it's a small town just outside Dubbo in country New South Wales. I would love to come back to Melbourne. I used to live in Melbourne, maybe once conditions permit, and hopefully they do soon. And I hope everyone is safe and well. Anyway, like I said, I do have a disclaimer at the start. Well, actually, I didn't think I said that yet. Time travel. I do have a disclaimer. I love tech jokes, and I have a whole bunch of them. Actually, as an ad hoc one, I decided to do a second one tonight based on something that was said at the start, but we'll get to that. Anyway, why did the vulnerability get tired? Because it
I will just amusing.
I think that joke was too potent for the internet, and it appears to have broken Steve's internet. Hopefully he can reconnect. Just a moment. The first time that's happened. Punchline kills the internet. Maybe I should have got some of the jokes off him and I could have read them while we were waiting. I'm sure my delivery wouldn't have been as good though. Alright, we'll give Steve a couple of moments to reconnect. If not, we might move on and then loop back to Steve if he can join us in a little bit. Yeah, I think we'll move on. All right. Jason, are you okay to go next? Or go now, I guess, basically. A bit earlier than expected. Cool, if you can share your screen, we will get going. So if you weren't here last month, I think it was last month. Was it last month you presented last, Jason, or the month before? I don't know. Months are all the same now. Month before. But Jason, if you missed the last time Jason presented, yeah, he has been doing AWS for a few years now, but not too long. He has 6 AWS certifications, which is very good effort. That takes a lot. And was an AWS ambassador with the desire to return once he's done his CIVO probation. So with that, all of that said, we will switch over to Jason.
Hi, everyone. Well, so I'll jump in and take over. Oh, well, Steve's just jumped back in, but yeah, so this one is a bit of a level 100, but you know, there's still some things that newbies would like to know. And, you know, obviously for all you serverless people that you can, you know, run off and grab a drink now, but for everyone else, this was a talk that I sort of pulled out of a blog post which I recently put up for CIVO. So as Rob said, a little bit about myself. I'm currently a AWS consultant at CIVO. I've got the 6 AWS certs. And as Rob said, I was previously an AWS ambassador, but you know, when you change to a different partner, you need to drop out for 6 months. So hopefully I'll be back again and joining people like Aryan and JM. So yeah, there's my details there. Probably the important one, as I said, this was from a blog, so you can go and read it at your leisure. have a look at civo.com.au/blog. There is a wealth of knowledge for really smart people that have blogs up there, as well as this one. So I'm going to talk about a few different options that there are for connecting to EC2. Some of them have been around for donkeys, and some of them are really quite new. So, and some have sort of been hidden a little bit and brought to the forefront a little bit more. So we'll hit up with the first one. And this is really a traditional way of accessing servers, SSH, RDP. You need, obviously, a couple of things to be able to access them. You need to set up a security group with either port 22 or port 3389 for SSH or RDP. And you also need your PEM key that you create with the instance. And depending on whether you're connecting to a Linux or a Windows system, you'll use that PEM key in different ways. So if it's a Linux box, use that PEM key to just straight SSH in. Generally, you add a -i on there and put in the PEM key. And one thing that Steve had brought up when we were chatting earlier is, always remember to change the permissions on your PEM key. If you pull that down, so you'll need to want it to 400 so that you can access it. Otherwise, SSH will complain at you that it's unsecure. For a Windows box, however, that PEM key is used for decoding the password. So when you connect into your instance now, if you go through the connect screen, you'll get a little box like this. You can click on the link for the RDP client, and then you've got this get password link. Click on the get password link, and that will open up another little box and give you an option to either upload the PEM key through Explorer, or you can cut and paste the PEM key into a text box. Click OK there, and then you'll get the decoded password. And then you use that with, as it shows there, the default username on the Windows servers is administrator. So log in with administrator and your password, you're all good. Obviously, the other thing that you do need as well is some form of access. So either internet access in, or you'll need to be on your corporate network, or in through your AWS workspaces, which now have that new way of connecting, authentication. You still need to get in. So in some instances, this can be a little insecure, especially if you need to get sort of punch holes through the internet to access in this way. The next method, and this has been around since 2018, is using Session Manager. So previously, Session Manager used to be sort of hidden within Systems Manager. So, if you weren't used to using Systems Manager, having a look through the whole big slew of different options that were in there, this might have been something that, went missing. And you had to go through and then sort of find it here in Session Manager, in Systems Manager, and then go. One of the really cool things now is there's been a recent update, and if you right-click on your instances, have a look. One of the first boxes that you'll see is this connect, and that really brings up this type of box here. So as you can see, there's now a little tab which says Session Manager, and that will take you into connecting through Session Manager. Session Manager just straight from here, actually pops up another window, and it gives you a browser-based access to your servers. For a Linux session, you get an SSH connection, but for Windows, you get PowerShell. So that's great if you're really into PowerShell, but you won't be able to do any of your GUI stuff through this Windows session. The other thing is, although this is now really my preference for connecting to EC2 instances, and again, whether that be like your standard one or an EC2 instance for say ECS or something, is to use Session Manager. But they've got a few caveats. So it needs an SSM agent. Well, wrong click. It needs an SSM agent installed. There are some versions of Linux that already come with the agent pre-installed. So Amazon Linux, Amazon Linux 2, Ubuntu, and your Amazon Linux for ECS. It also comes natively installed in macOS and Windows. So if you kick those ones off, that's already got the agent installed, which is really handy because things like Red Hat, SUSE, CentOS, whatever, you actually need to sort of launch them and then find some other way to connect to install the agent, which is a little bit of a pain in the backside. Obviously, you can make your own use out of them once you've got them up, but that first time, again, it's a little bit of a pain. The other things that you need is it needs an EC2 role attached to those instances with SSM permission. So this is thankfully pretty easy. AWS provide, actually there's quite a few different policies that are there for SSM, and probably the best one, easiest one to grab is Amazon EC2 role for SSM. It's pretty straightforward name for the policy. So yeah, if you just make sure that your instances have that policy attached to the role, or you can have a look in there and sort of narrow that down a little bit. That role is not just for your session manager connection, but that will allow you to do the rest of your systems manager functionality. So patching, state manager, run commands, etc. And the final thing that you need to have, and this is one that quite often trips people up, is systems manager. Like a lot of AWS services, is sort of outside of your VPC. So you need some way to connect to systems manager. So whether that be internet gateway, NAT gateway, you only need outbound access for your agent to connect, or preferably a VPC endpoint. So yeah, those are your big three for connecting to Session Manager. And again, the really cool thing about this is you can launch all your instances in a private subnet, and you can still access them, which is cool. You can also access them straight from console as well. So, if you're off somewhere, don't have your laptop, and you need to connect in, as long as you've got a browser at a friend's place or whatnot, you can connect into your instances, which is really cool. There's a whole lot of extra stuff that you can do with Sessions Manager as well. You can enable logging so you can see all the commands that people put in. You can configure your environment a little bit, things like that, which I'm not going to cover in tonight's session. But yeah, you can read all about that if you just have a look on the Amazon docs, look for Systems Manager and Session Manager, and you'll find all the details there. So one of the other cool things that you can do with Session Manager as well is port forwarding. So, I said here that you can't get a GUI for your Windows sessions, but you can with bot forwarding, which is really cool. So this uses your AWS CLI to access Session Manager. It does require a separate Session Manager plugin, so you can't just use your straight CLI. You need that plugin. That's pretty easy to install, and there's versions for Mac and Windows and Linux as well. So install that, and then you just run your standard CLI commands. So there's a AWS doc on that. So if you look for Systems Manager, look for Session Manager working with Session Start, and that will give you a bunch more info on how to connect up the RDP. But basically, run this AWS SSM start-session, give it a target of the instance ID that you want to connect to. Now, if you just stop there, you'll get the command line version. So you can use this one for your Linux servers, or if you're just happy with PowerShell, you can do that. If you carry on, give it the document name, so start port forwarding session, and add the parameters with the port number that you want to connect to and what you want your local port to be. And then that can initiate your RDP. So I've got a quick demo here. So I've already set my profile, but let's see. Actually, let me just show you first off my Firefox. So I've got two instances here, Linux and Windows, and you can see that there's no public IPv4 address. Same thing with the Windows session. So these are all in private. And without being on any special network, just straight through the internet, I can hit this, I get my session, and I get my connection. The interesting thing here is you might be used to using the EC2 user with the standard sort of SSH, but with Systems Manager, it's actually an SSM user, and that's the same as well for Windows. So if I just show you the port forwarding, so again, we've got it all here, and I'm just forwarding the RDP to port 9000. Click that up, and then that opens your session and sits there waiting for connection. And then I can bring up, I've got localhost 9000. I've already entered in the administrator, and I grabbed the password from the from Connect and get password. Already done that and entered that in. So just click to open up, connect. And now I've actually connected into a Windows session straight from my my local desktop. So yeah, this is really handy if you're running Windows servers and you want to be able to connect and run GUI sessions. Yeah. All right, back to my slide. If I can find PowerPoint, here we go. Cool. So yeah, this is really handy. And again, just for a standard SSH session, you can go here and connect up to your instances from your terminals on your local workstation. Now we get into some really new ones here. EC2 Serial Console. So this was introduced in March. It's available for both Windows and Linux. On the Linux servers, as you can see here, it gives you like a TTY SSO. And for Windows, you get a COM0. I think it's COM0 port. So I've only had a little bit of a play around with this on Windows and sort of had a bit of mixed success with that. So yeah, when I was rebooting stuff, I could see all of the shutdown and startup commands come through, but I really didn't get a login or anything. So I'm not really a Windows guy, so maybe it needs to be in a special mode or something. On Linux though, like it's dead simple. Fire it up, you just hit connect, and you get a login prompt. Now the other thing to note there is it's a local login, so you need a user and a password. By default, AWS won't give you the root password, and you also don't have the password for EC2 user or SSM user. Your PEM keys don't work there. So one of the things that you will need to do to set up if you want to use the serial console is ensure that either you change the root password so you know what it is, or you create some other either local user or authenticated user you can log in with. In the blog, I've got a little SSM run command in there that you can use to go through and update the root password on your servers. So not too much to say on this one because it's a pretty straightforward session, especially for Linux servers. Just connect and you get that get a local login. And the final thing that I'll be talking about tonight is AWS Cloud Shell. It's not really a way to connect as such, but it's or a login method, but it's a different way to connect. It seems to be fairly interesting. You access this by going into this little icon here, which sort of looks like a command prompt, but I'm assuming on your AWS console, right next to the bell icon, and you click that, and that will open up a new window with this AWS command shell. So as you can see here, this first line is preparing your terminal. So first time when you run this, it does take a little while to run up, because what it's actually doing is it's firing up an Amazon Linux 2 based environment. And Amazon called this a browser-based pre-authenticated shell. So it's actually pretty cool. So it fires up, and you may be hearing my dog going off in the background, but the fun and games are doing this from home. But yeah, so obviously you connect in with whatever IAM permissions that you use to connect, and that's the permissions that are inherited. But it's got a whole bunch of tools, like it's got your AWS CLI, obviously. It's got SAM CLIs, ECS CLI, it's got Node.js, it's got Python, Git, make, sudo, wget, whole different slew of tools that come, sort of pre-authenticated. You also get 1 gig of storage that's persistent, and it's free, so which is really cool. Pretty sure you can get extra storage if you wish, but you need to pay for that. So if you want more info, again, just go to docs.aws.amazon.com/cloudshell. So that's pretty straightforward to find the user guides for that. One of the things that the docs did highlight is one of the other tools that's installed is Yum. But if you install anything with Yum, your environment is not persistent. So unless those Yum tools deploy into the local storage that you've got, so if they go into a standard /user or whatever, once you close down your environment, that install goes away. So it won't be there next time you fire up your Cloud Shell. So, there are some things that you can do to sort of, when you connect in, it will automatically fire off, some scripts or, installs if you want to. But yeah, they're not going to be persistent. And yeah, that's the end of my my talk. So happy to open it for any questions.
Thanks, Jason. That was really good. I actually picked up a few things in there that I hadn't tried to use before, like developer, but I still haven't actually played with Cloud Shell. So it's good to see how easy it really is.
Yeah,
and the System Manager stuff I haven't done either. So
yeah, I mean, I can see things like Cloud Shell being really handy for those times when, say you're off at, a party or somewhere and you get a Sev1 and you need to, connect and you don't have a laptop with all the tools installed. Hey, everyone's got a browser, connect in and, yeah, you're all good.
So there's a question from me then. You might have mentioned it. I just wasn't paying proper attention. Is the Cloud Shell able to see into your VPCs?
Yeah, so it's fully, it's authenticated sort of based off the IAM permissions that you've logged into. So, you still need to log in because, as you see, it's launched from that little button on the console. So you've logged in, authenticated yourself, you click that, and that's the permissions that it has. And then you just run your CLI commands straight from there.
But the shell itself, or the box that the shell is on, is outside of your local
Yeah. So the box of the shell itself is not sort of within your VPC.
Yep, that makes sense. We had one question come through so far. Don't forget, for anybody else, if you do have any questions, now's the time to ask. You may not get an opportunity to quiz Steve live on YouTube again. Steve, fucking do it! Oh man, what a day! Sorry, Jason. You may not get an opportunity to quiz Jason live on YouTube again, so don't miss out. So, first question from the audience is from JM. It is, can you still copy and paste files and data from your Mac to your remote RDP windows in AWS via SSM port forwarding?
I haven't actually tried that. So, yeah. Well,
Unsure.
It should for the. Yeah, I'd say if you're doing it through, your RDP, it'll work. It's just like your normal RDP, so that should work. And yeah, when you've got a standard SSH, if you're going in through that way, then yeah, you can copy and paste stuff because it's just a terminal in there. As far as uploading files and stuff, yeah, I would imagine that you probably could, but I haven't really played around with it.
Yeah, I guess that depends on the RDP's protocol and whether it sends it in the same stream or if it tries to open a new connection to a new port that's not forwarded.
Yeah. Haven't tried that.
It looks like somebody else has chimed in on the chat and said that you can. That does work.
Yep. Cool. Yep.
Cool. That seems to be the only question that we have got so far. So we might let you go. Thank you very much, Jason. That was as informative as ever. Just lost my. There we go. There's my window. Cool. Thank you very much. Let's move on then. Okay. So now that was Jason. Thank you, Jason. Now we're going to go back to Steve, who is there. He is there. Steve, hooray! Are you able to reshare your screen for me? And we can try this again. Yep, okay. Yep, I can see that. I can see that just fine. So let me bring you back into the call, into the broadcast. One moment.
Hello, everyone. Again, it was one of those Murphy's Law moments just then. Did you spot it? Amazing, and thank you for Jason for being so ready to go to jump on and jump on in my internet downtime or my undocumented internet outage. Let's go with that. But hello, I'm going to pick up where I left off. Hello again. So for those that don't know me, my name is Developer Steve. It actually legally is my name. So I've been a developer evangelist, developer advocate, kind of the same thing, for a number of years now. I'm currently one of the senior developer advocates at a company called Sneak. Previously, PayPal Braintree, at Xero, at Telstra, and at IBM. And one of the things I love about being an evangelist or an advocate is just being able to, as a developer, geek out with communities. Well, not even as a developer, as an tech enthusiast. I always like to think about it. For so many years. So when I got married a few years ago, we combined our last names. So Cooper plus Houchin became Kuchin. So that was part of my married name. And I thought, you know what? Everyone calls me Developer Steve when I go to conferences. Well, we used to go to conferences. Well, we still do it virtually now. You know what I mean? So yeah, I thought, I wonder if I could make it my middle name. Turns out you can. It's actually on my driver's license, it's actually on my driver's license. Anyway, for those that want to connect, you can search for that on whatever social platform. I'm kind of that on all the different places. But also, and part of the other reason why I decided to make it my middle name was, other than seeing if I could, was I've been writing code for so many years now, like literally since the age of 8, I was writing, and if anyone remembers this, please put it into the chat. But I was writing QBasic on an Atari 800 XL. Oh, such good days. For those that are familiar with it, it was, as the name suggests, it was pretty basic. And going through what I call my developer origin story or my developer career, it's more of a passion thing. So I don't really like to think of it as a career, although your career can be a passion. Anyway, I digress. Even going through my developer origin story, like moving through digital agency, building out my own little startup apps, or just some ideas that I had that I'd throw together and became a business at some point. Well, a whole bunch of them became businesses. The one thing that I kind of realized, sort of going through, particularly in the open source world, is just how much now we utilize open source libraries and communities, like the work that comes out of the communities in a lot of the libraries and dependencies, in a lot of the platforms. We utilize without even thinking now. If you think, those that come from the developer background, think all the times now that you just npm install or composer install or install a package and be able to build out an application really, really quickly. The one thing I've always been, I guess it's always been in the back of my mind, particularly when I was in digital agency days, building out, single page apps using the likes of Drupal or WordPress, etc., is what else underneath the surface is my application exposing to the wider internet. And indeed, so many times there was a deployment that I would do using an open source platform, only to need to go back to it 4 weeks later to clean up because, hey, that infrastructure is suddenly using way too much resources. You know that thing where you get that bill at the end of the month and someone goes, "Why is this so high?" And you're like, shouldn't be. I've been there. I've been there. So many times I cleaned out rootkits. So many times. Hopefully you haven't been there. But if you think about it, it's a bit like an iceberg, and at the very top of above the surface of the water, like that is literally your publicly exposed code. So when you deploy an application, and from a developer point of view, well, from a DevOps point of view too, we deploy these applications to help our end users in so many different ways. You think that application you build out or that you deploy or that you support is there because there's somebody that is going to use that button, use that function, use that app to connect to the world or order a thing or do something that affects their everyday lives. The one thing I think as technology enthusiasts is we need to start adopting this security mindset to protect those end users that we build these applications for. And of course, it's no secret that, the next part of our iceberg journey or our iceberg stack is open source. Because like I was saying, we build these applications, we use these platforms that are all built off open source technology. We're all a product of open source to some extent. Like all the learning, all the sharing, the community spirit of everyone contributing and everyone learning from that and everyone benefiting from that, which is the thing like I always loved with the tech world is there is this open source community of communal sharing, knowledge building. Of course, we see that with the number of packages exponentially growing year on year. And sometimes what we see in a lot of the open source communities is a particular package will split off some of its base functions into a dependency. So I can just npm install that particular library. And with that, the base functionality comes in as a dependency, which then not only gets used by that library, but quite often other libraries start adopting it too, which makes sense. That's fundamentally what the open source world is all about, which again, I love that. That's my favorite. One of the things we're starting to see surface along with that is just the number of vulnerabilities that grow across ecosystems year on year, which is also exponentially growing. So this is that one package, that one library, which suddenly there's a new attack vector or a attack method which is surfaced in alongside that. And it's so easy now to install or utilize a particular library or a particular piece of open source work where there's an attack vector that's being surfaced that you won't even know is there until you get that bill at the end of the month when someone walks up and goes, "Hey, there's this big thing," or you get that AWS bill and you're like, "No, don't do that. Don't go my server." This is the thing we're starting to at the development at the code, what I call the code front, at the very top of the iceberg stack. The thing we're starting to become more aware of on the security front, because ultimately, again, we want to not only protect our infrastructure, we want to protect the end user that we deploy these apps to. Quite often, depending on what ecosystem, what the application is built in, or what the application is utilizing, we see a difference between the vulnerabilities being surfaced through indirect and direct dependencies. So with PHP, for example, we see a lot of vulnerabilities being surfaced through direct dependencies. I actually just recently did a talk at a Drupal camp where we were looking at just this, because Drupal 7, and if you are using Drupal 7, please upgrade to 8 and 9 because there is active vulnerabilities in there currently. So please upgrade. And this is in the direct Drupal or Drust libraries. So totally upgrade. As opposed to say Ruby or NPM, where we see the vulnerability surface through indirect dependencies. So this is a library with support libraries, and that's where the vulnerability appears. Indeed, something we've seen particular to the NPM ecosystem is a cascade of indirect dependencies being pulled in, which is surfacing vulnerabilities. So there's event stream, for example, we saw a vulnerable dependency get added in that was cleaned out, and then a few weeks later, that was another one appeared, et cetera, et cetera. That actually happened for a number of months. I just want to mention there too, a lot of the open source community, and again, I'm a big fan of open source, using it many, many years. The thing I wanted to take a moment to mention too is a lot of these communities are run by passionate enthusiasts, tech enthusiasts like yourselves. If you are using a particular library or you're utilizing a particular platform, please do remember to contribute back where you can. I know you all do. I just like to mention it. Always great to highlight. But just contribute back where you can, even if it's just updating a README or testing a release candidate or just whatever you can contribute back to a project, please do. Quite often what we see is vulnerabilities being reported or being raised against a project. And there'll be a time delay with the fixes going out or the release candidates being released. Again, these are very passionate enthusiasts that could build out what they can when they can. So if you do have time, please contribute back. One of the ways we do that at Snyk is through a program called Snyk Advisor. Now, this is also a good way to do some due diligence on some of the platform or some of the libraries, some of the open source stuff you're using. To be able to look at the holistic view of how many contributors there are, like how many bugs are being raised, if there's any current versions you need to be aware of on a particular library, platform, etc. But also we use this to contact back or to contribute back to communities where we can, and just to let them know that something's been raised or there's a particular security alert or a CVE been raised against that particular group. And then where we can too, we'll actually contribute code back or get a fix out, a temporary fix out while a proper one is put in place or while that package is updated with the fix. Also, actually, on that note too, we also manage the Node.js ecosystem vulnerability disclosure program. And shout out to all the security researchers that help contribute to this and do research into vulnerabilities before they're identified by malicious actors, because as you can imagine, with that exponential growth in attack vectors being identified, this is critical to keeping our users safe. And again, like we as tech people, tech folk, tech enthusiasts, we deploy these applications and maintain them to try and facilitate something in our end users, like be it a button or a form or something that they do in their day-to-day lives, just to streamline that and make it a little bit easier for them. But also, so we bring entertainment to them, all manner of different things to their day-to-day. We need to protect them and make sure we keep them safe. Anyway, that was basically an overview on the software side of things. So now, of course, I'm going to get into the cloud native side of things or the infrastructure side of things, because, well, that's why we're in this meetup tonight, right? In particular, wanted to talk a bit about containerization, and then we'll go on to ISE, and then I have like I might do 3 demos. I'm feeling dangerous tonight, but anyway, we'll see how we go. I don't want to go over time, but with containerization, as we all know, super easy to use, super easy to deploy stuff now. Like literally, a terminal with a couple lines of anything, you can get infrastructure deployed not only locally to build off, but also into clouds. It's so cool because from a development and scale point of view, I can build my application in a localized Docker or a Docker environment with containerization or Kubernetes. But Docker, for example, we see such a wide adoption with up to 242 billion downloads of Docker images to date, which is massive. And I get why everyone is using containerization now, because of that scalability, because of that elasticity, which I always love. Because ultimately we build that application or we deploy that infrastructure, deploy that app for as much adoption as we can possibly get into that infrastructure, which is kind of how it works, right? That's what it should be doing. But that also forms part of our holistic app iceberg stack, which is the next layer down. And of course, a lot of these containerized images are built using the same open source components I've just been talking about. So it's no surprise that a lot of the containers we see come in through the likes of Docker Hub, and I have a couple that I can show you tonight, I carry the same vulnerabilities in them. And again, we need to maintain like the integrity, the security on these applications, not only on the code front level, but also on in the packages, but also in the infrastructure that we're deploying these applications on. Again, the point is to try and protect our end users. We actually see the top 10 Docker base images from Docker Hub carry vulnerabilities in them because they're built from that same open source componentry. So it kind of makes sense. The way I like to think about this, though, and yes, this is another tech joke, but with great containerization comes great responsibility. Again, please put all comments and facepalm emojis into the chat. The last part of our iceberg, which is why we're here tonight, because I'm going to demo this, and it will work because we've had our tech fail for tonight, Murphy, is infrastructure as code. So using the likes of AWS CloudFormation, AWS Code Pipelines, and well, I always like mentioning S3, and I'm not going to get into permissions on S3 tonight. That's probably a talk. Actually, if someone wants to come to a talk on that, everyone always needs a refresher on that one, and I think we know why. But anyway, the thing I love most about the likes of code pipelines is as a developer, like I can automate my deployment or be part of the automation deployment flow. And like all I'm doing is pushing something to a repo, and then it's automation. Everything in automation always works well. Always looking at you, Jenkins. My tests always run first time. Oh, said no, whatever. Anyway, yeah, when automation works really well, it's really cool because all I have to do is push my code through, and then it goes through all the checks and balances. And in particular, from an automation DevOps side of things, I can set up gate control and be able to put some nice gates in place to make sure everything does flow as expected. The number one thing we have identified, though, or we see time and time again, is misconfiguration is one of the number one cloud vulnerabilities. So that is also having the right things like the right permission set, having the right infrastructure configuration in place so that, well, if anything is able to get in, that it, well, just isn't able to get in. So even knowing what ports you've got open and periodically putting a review in place to make sure you do go through and check to make sure you've got things like permissions and ports and all the security stuff that you want to have in place, that it is still as is expected. Anyway, on that note, let's tempt Murphy's Law and do some demos. So the first one, I actually want to use part of this in, hopefully you can see that okay. Looks like you can see that okay. I want to use the first part of this demo in the second demo. So it is a cascading demo. It's almost meta. No, it's not. Anyway, so what I'm going to be doing is using one of our demo apps from our GitHub. I can see the screen. So yes. From our GitHub. Now, this like I said, this is a demo app, so please do not use this in production, and I'm going to show you why. It's one of my favorite things to point out. Yeah, I'm really tempting Murphy because I'm about to use a vulnerable demo. What can go wrong? No, I know what can go wrong. This does have 59 known vulnerabilities in it. You can try this yourself at home. Please do not put this in production or near any production infrastructure. The exploits folder in this repo has all sorts of known vulnerable examples for you to be able to play around with. In particular, the one we're looking at today is using the marked library. And then we're going to use this in a code pipeline that we're going to set up just so we can see how bad it is, but also, yeah, it's for kind of fun. This is using a cross-site scripting attack. So we're using where is it? There it is. We're using 0.3.5, which is, you can see in the package manifest, and anything below 0.3.6 is kind of bad. Well, it is bad. You shouldn't use it. It's basically a markdown library that uses takes some user input and then outputs that back out as markdown. So pretty simple. In particular, like most input output libraries or user input libraries, we've got a sanitized true flag available. I should hope everyone's sanitizing their user input because, well, we're going to keep those users safe. It's got a sanitization flag as part of the configuration for this particular library, and that just does some syntax matching against the user input just to try and filter out any nasty things or code injection or, well, any nasty things out of the input as it comes in. Because again, like we don't, as developers, we don't take any user input without making sure we sanitize things first. That is super critical. So let's switch to the application. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this library and then add it to the code pipeline that we set up, as I was saying. So this is a Markdown library. So I can do things like this. This is a bold, oops, statement. Yes, it is. See, Markdown. Yay. So that part works as expected. Of course, one of the things we can do with Markdown is links. So I can put something like that, for example, which will work as expected because, well, that's what it's supposed to do. And if I hover over it, I can see the URL that it's intended to go to. One of the common attack methods or vectors using Markdown in particular is by injecting JavaScript, particularly when that Markdown input or that input then outputs into the user's browser. Because as a malicious attacker can basically use this to do all sorts of nasty things inside the user's browser, but also on infrastructure as well. So most libraries will have some type of regex running. So with that, using that sanitized true flag, for example, we'll have something running to try and detect this and be able to strip it out, which is exactly what this one does. That's not the vulnerability for this particular library. One of the more common ways to get around this is URL encode some character types as part of that user input. Again, all we're trying to do as a malicious actor is try and get around that sanitization function, so that a function to be able to identify user input and make sure that it's not stripped out, but still able to run inside the browser in a bad sort of way. So, and that input in particular, like it's able to pick that out and identify it. The way to get around this particular one, or the way to surface this particular vulnerability, is to do something very similar to that, except we're also going to add the word this, which is an object type inside JavaScript. So, and this is, I was trying to think if there was a pun there, there's not. This is the way you get around this particular regex or this particular sanitization, and that is the vulnerability that is surfaced with this particular vuln. You'll see there, like when I click that link now, it opens an alert box in JavaScript inside the user's browser or inside my browser that says this box is alerting. Hey, yes, it is. From a malicious point of view, that was just doing an alert box, but I could do anything I wanted from there on in, be it sending the user to a website that I've set up designed to steal something from them, or also being able to use this to potentially inject something onto the infrastructure and do all sorts of like nasty things, be it DDoS, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that particular library. Actually, we'll come back to that. I'll just highlight it. So this brings us to code pipelines. Let me just refresh that because I don't trust it's going to time out. There we go. We're good now. So where that fits into the likes of code pipelines, and again, I love code pipelines, or the like setting up CI/CD things in using things like code pipelines, because as a dev, not a lazy dev, I just like it when automation works. Woo. So what we're going to do is set up a code pipeline, and here's basically going to pull in from this repo. This is on my public GitHub. If anyone wants to go play with it, please do. And we're going to deploy this, or get this to deploy to Elastic Beanstalk, which I'm a big fan of for light apps. It's really cool, really easy to get stuff deployed onto. I've already got a really basic build spec in as part of my deployment. I mean, it just literally has Node.js 14 in there. So, and a couple of other things, but I mean, that's kind of all there is to this one. It's literally just a demo. For the most part, this is the AWS app straight from, well, actually, this is the AWS Node.js app straight from the documentation. This is the example app, which actually has something surprising in it, but we'll get to that. Spoilers. Anyway, this is literally just the Node.js AWS app, the demo app. So let's build out our pipeline, and then it can be doing some things. So I'm just going to call this one test pipeline. Next. I didn't put the thing test. I'm just going to call it test then. Okay, cool. Source provider, we're just going to pull in from GitHub. Always remember to use version 2 now because version 1 is depreciating. Not quite depreciated, but version 2's, I mean, it's the second one. It's got to be better, right? I've already connected my GitHub, so we don't have to, I mean, here's one I prepared earlier. I've already connected my GitHub, spoilers, which is going to scan my many thousands of repos, and I'm going to pull in that particular repo, and we just want to pull in the main branch, which just like that. So we're just going to use code pipeline default. We're not going to do a full clone. Click next, and we'll go to AWS code build. And I should already have a project name set up, like so. Can add some environmental variables in there, but I mean, this is just a demo, literally a hello world of sorts, so don't need to do that. And we're going to go Elastic Beanstalk, like so. And I've already got an application name that I've created earlier and an environment name as well. Those just take you out to Elastic Beanstalk screens where you just set up like you would normally with Elastic Beanstalk. And you can use a few different other methods to deploy from this as well. So if you're going to, I do like, me and Jason were talking about this before the show or before the meetup. And I do really like ECS as well. Yes. Anyway, go next. Let's get this building. So that is then going to hopefully give me a whole bunch of green ticks on the next screen. Well, not straight away, but it might take a few seconds. Why is it not going anywhere? Oh, there we go. Phew. I was a bit worried there for a second. I thought Murphy was coming back to visit. Anyway, that's going to do its pull request thing, run its build, and then run its deploy in a moment. Actually, I could probably stop that and then add some gates in and let it run. No, there we go. Yeah, see the build phase in this, it feels like for forever, but it actually goes fairly quick in the scheme of things. It just feels like forever. Anyway, while that's running, I thought I'd also show, should I stop it? Yeah, all right, I'm gonna stop that. What I'm gonna do, stop and let's go stop and abandon. Oh, I don't think I selected the thing. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna stop that because what I'm gonna do, okay, cool. Sweet. What I'm gonna do is edit that and add a security gate in. So what I'm gonna do is add a stage. So I call these gates, but literally as part of the flow. So as part of the grab source, build that source and then deploy to thing. You can add some really nice gate controls in. So you can add things like testing or security scanning or something that you basically want the code to go through before it's actually deployed to source, which is important because, I mean, we need those tests in place. We need that security scanning in place before something goes out to the world or gets released to the top of that iceberg in an iceberg stack view. Anyway, I'm going to call this security. I'm going to add a security scan in, and then let's go action group. Call this a name. I'm just going to call it security again. And then, so I'm going to add my sneak connection in. There we go. We're going to use the source artifact. So this will just add a security gate in so that if anything gets picked up in the scan, well, it's going to let me know about it. Yes, going to authorize that. Hopefully it doesn't ask me to do SSO sign in, or it's going to. I might have to grab my, okay, there we go. I did log in earlier, but for some reason it seemingly wants me to, don't install iOS now. Oh. This is going so well. Me on my phone. All right, that should have, yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. Do your thing. Then it's going to redirect me back. Okay, click here. Should I click here or should I give it? No, I'm going to click that. I'm impatient. Oh, okay. Wait. Now it's probably. It usually works pretty quick. Amazing. I'm going to switch to my this is fine scene. Okay, there we go. Whew. So I'm going to set that to a high vulnerability severity, and I'll show you what that is when we go through. But literally, you can set, as part of your what I call gate control, you can set different severity for things to be blocked. So if there's a very high vulnerability or very high security instance detected, it's able to stop the deployment, which is kind of what you want from your gate control. I mean, that's why it's there. It's no different to scripts failing tests, and you want the code to stop, so the code deployment to stop, so that somebody can go have a look at that and do some further investigations. I clicked, yeah, there we go, and then it should flick me back to AWS. Yes, confirm. Hooray! The only other thing I'm going to do is an output name for artifacts. I'm just going to put report and then save that and redeploy. And like I said, you can add a whole bunch of different gates as part of your flow for deployment. That should, I'm going to release the change, which should kick off proceedings again, and then it will run through and end up deploying to EBS, Elastic Beanstalk, which is currently in progress. Huzzah. The thing I'm going to do now while that's running, so what that's now done is it's scanning the source, there we go, scanning the source in the Git repo, and then is updating back into my Sneak dashboard, which I can then go have a quick look at. Where is it? There it is there. Because the surprising thing I wanted to show, and I actually, when I first looked at this code, looked at the code I picked up from the Amazon docs, I thought, hey, this looks fine. This kind of makes sense. And then I noticed the code level thing that we identified, which is the HTTP should actually be HTTPS in the documentation. So this is being scanned. This scans for code anomalies like this, and then also is able to let you know that there's something which could potentially be bad and you want to get fixed up and patched, etc. The other thing I'm going to do as part of this, actually, while that's running, I thought I'd also show, yay. See, that actually passed the green tick, or it passed the gate, because I had it set for high, and that particular vulnerability is a medium. So if I'd had it set medium or lower, or then anything below that rating would basically get stopped. The other thing I was going to quickly show while that's deploying, which totally should go green. Oh, wait, I switched to the wrong tab. Oh, yeah, it's building. That's totally going to go green. Jedi trick. The other thing I wanted to quickly show is what I was talking about with misconfiguration, because I have an example of this, and this is from, am I allowed to mention Google? Oh, I just did. This is from the Google repo for Kubernetes. This is literally the store Kubernetes microservices demo, which is like a test store. But one thing I've done is I've hooked up the public repo. Yeah, let's go that one. And you'll be able to see the misconfigurations that can cause issues with your stack deployments. So, and the thing I like about this is it actually steps you through, and you're able to investigate and again do that due diligence. You can step through the configuration file and be able to work out why. So, and this is commonly one that I see, which is configuration user permissions. So you can see that like container is running without root user control. And it'll actually step you through the issue, and then also how to fix it as well. So, which is usually a pretty easy fix. But these type of things, particularly on the configuration side of things, it's always good to not only scan your configuration files once off, but ongoingly scan them too, particularly as new versions come out or new attack vectors are identified in your infrastructure. Like, it's so easy to set and forget, and then next minute you get the bill at the end of the month and you don't want to be there. Let's see if that's now finished deploying. Oh, it's still, oh, wasn't that good timing. Oh, timed that so well. Let me grab, I don't think this URL is the same, but it might be. Let me grab the latest URL from test app. Hey, there we go. Oh, actually, I think it is the same. Never mind. Hey, it worked. Huzzah. It worked. Okay, so of course it worked. What I'm going to do now is, and this is the thing I love most about pipelines, is now if I update that base repo, it's going to start building things all over again and deploying. But what I can do is I'm going to add that in as a, there we go. Yeah, I'll leave the comma there just because it's not supposed to be there. There we go. That now should kick off another build any second now. Wait, did I commit that? I did. I did commit that. Any second now, that should now start building again. Hey, there we go. I needed to refresh the screen evidently. So now if I click back into that, that's already, yeah, there we go. It's already doing another redeploy. I'm not going to let that one finish. You get the idea. But what I am going to do is switch back to that particular project on the security side of things. Where did I put it? It's down here somewhere. There it is. And it's still being scanned, so that hasn't updated yet. Come on. I want it now. That usually has updated now, but seemingly it has not yet. I think because it's still scanning. Okay, that normally has updated. What that should do is that's going to rescan the package.json file. I probably need to wait for that one to finish. It's basically going to scan that package.json and then detect the vulnerable library that we've just added to it. Only it hasn't quite, yeah, there we go. And that's failed because of that anyway, which is good. Actually, I think it is the comma that's causing the issues there. Let me just take that out and see if that works really quick. Then I had one more thing I wanted to talk about. All right, let's see if that now should trigger it again. That should already be updated back in here, but let's have a quick look. We'll check the package.json. Yeah, there we go. So the mark library is now being picked up in here. And one thing I really like is you can also get it to raise a vulnerability, raise a PR back onto the repo and set some fixes in place. And for that one, it's literally just a version update. So of course, then you can run through all your testing and stuff again. Yes, that's now running through, doing it again. Anyway, I'm not going to let that finish. You get the idea. And yay, that did work eventually. Couple of fails. Anyway, not really fails, challenges. Anyway, there was one more thing I wanted to talk about. And this one, as dev, has really, really scared me of late. So not surprisingly, so there is a fifth part of our iceberg that we've been talking about today, and that is the dev environment. So as we all know, as technologists, like we install stuff into, or we install open source components into our local environments in so many different ways. And now, not surprisingly, we're starting to see these vulnerabilities surface in our developer environments. In fact, this is one of the scariest. I'm not going to do it tonight, but please check it out for yourself. I can actually share the repo for the demo for this if you wanted to try it yourself. Just be aware of what you're installing, and please don't leave any of these extensions installed. But VS Code, for example, and Brew is also just as vulnerable. So please be aware of what you're installing in your local. But in particular, in VS Code, which, by the way, has 14 million monthly users now and 25,000 extensions, a lot of the extensions are built using the same open source components, which is just as vulnerable. So LaTeX Workshop, Open in Default Browser, Instant Markdown, for example, all have known vulnerabilities in them. In fact, we published a security alert about these about 6 weeks ago. Instant Markdown, for example, I've been using in demos. There's a particular version of it you need to do it in. It's the last version, not the current one. But I can lift someone's password file from their Mac remotely. So please be aware of what components you're installing in your local. We got full write-ups in this. And again, or if anyone jumps onto Zoom after, I can share the GitHub link if you want to have a look and try it yourself. Just please don't leave it installed. Anyway, I know I'm pretty much out of time, but please always be scanning source code, containers, infrastructure. Also, just know what you're installing in your dev environments and make sure you update them. Was going to tell you about SneakCon, but I know I'm out of time. I'm about to get kicked off. Anyway, it's coming in October. Lots of great talks, region friendly. It's free to attend. And the DevSecCon Leadership Awards are open now. Again, I can share links after this. And please always remember, use your tech superpowers for good, and always remember to be excellent to each other. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
Yes, we always love a good demo, and the demo cards were reasonably okay for you today.
Reasonably favorable tonight.
Yeah, they didn't like your jokes, but otherwise, all good. So while we are waiting for other people to add their questions, I guess it's up to me to ask you something in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
So you showed a whole bunch of annoying things, well, bugs and things like that. What is, in a way, the weirdest vulnerability you've encountered?
The weirdest one. Actually, I'm probably going to have to think. I went two ways with my thoughts just said. The first one is IoT. So there was an exploit out a few years ago where somebody, for some reason, hijacked a whole bunch of, I've got one handy, these little Cat M1 devices. So these connect into IoT network, like specialized IoT networks or Cat M1. Somebody did a firmware attack to basically override a whole bunch of firmware on these to download anime. I don't know why you would want to do that, but someone did. It's probably the weirdest one I can think of. I mean, the scariest one is still, it still scares me doing the demo for this. In fact, so much so that VS Code one I was talking about, that scares me so much. I actually run OS X inside a VM just so I don't have to run it on my local environment. The first time my manager did the same thing, Liran, he did it on a live stream once with one of our security researchers when they first announced it. And the security researcher lifted his password file and it like displayed it to everyone on the live stream. He had to change all these passwords. It was great. It's probably the best live stream I've ever seen.
Okay, that's definitely an interesting situation. In the meantime, we've had a question come in from Steve McTaggart. For enterprises not wanting to have the code leave the network, what tooling would you suggest behind the firewall?
So that is a good question. I think anything that runs, and Sneak has broker versions. I haven't used it myself, but we have a broker-friendly version that can run inside firewall and inside network. Also, the code for us, like we don't take the code anywhere. It doesn't leave your repo. Like you still have the code there. So, but anyway, that's a Sneak thing. I think for me, as a infrastructure support person or from the infrastructure support side of things, I think this is where your security team need to have something in place that not only adheres to their policies, but also like they can support, maintain, and it's getting them the results that they want. Like, and that could be a combination of tools even. Of course, I'm going to say, hey, you should use things. Anyway, but I think this is where like review a whole bunch of things and see which works best for you. We do have a free tier, by the way. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Yep. Makes sense. Try everything and see what matches best in your environment.
Yep.
Cool. I am not seeing any more questions arrive. So in that case, I would say if you're going to be on the Zoom, then people can ask any other questions there maybe, or maybe on the Slack channel. As you said, you're there as well. So Steve, I want to thank you for an interesting presentation. And
thank you.
Some good jokes. So
thank
awesome.
you.
And then I'll hand it back
Thank you, Developer Steve. That was actually very fascinating. Especially the last bit about the IDEs. We don't tend to consider with the same level of scrutiny what we put on our own machines versus what gets deployed into production. So that's always big gap for a lot of people. All right, let's wrap this up. So our next event will be online only unless the situation in Melbourne somehow magically changes in the next week or two, which I don't think anybody is expecting. Back on the 29th, the last Wednesday of September. Same time, same place, right here on YouTube. Big thank you again to our sponsors, CMD, Versant, and Civo for their support for the rest of this year. And that's it. We will post a link to our virtual Zoom drink Slack thing. It'll be in Slack. There'll be a link in Slack if you want to join us on Zoom after this. As we mentioned, Developer Steve will be there, and I can see a few other people still hanging around that might be around there as well. A big thanks to Ian and JM for the news today, and to Jason and Developer Steve for their presentations. We will see you next month. Cheers.